Hello and welcome to episode 122 of Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. Very pleased today that joining me is Derek Lau, who is the game director over at Guild of Guardians with Immutable. How's it going, Derek?
Hey, doing very well. Great to chat with you again. It's good to be back on the podcast. You've done a lot since we last spoke.
Yeah, so you're just checking up. You were last on in August 2021 in episode 96. So we've done a few since then, and some stuff's gone on in the world of blockchain games, and as we'll find out with Guild of Guardians as well. But I thought maybe to kick us off, it would be good for you to give us like a brief overview of what Guild of Guardians is. And just before you do that, I will point out that you have your Substack called Evolution of Web3 Gaming, which is definitely worth subscribing to. And actually, I was just checking, one of the first post you did there was actually sort of an explanation of why Guild of Guardians is a mobile plus squad RPG game. But do you want to give us a bit more detail about Guild of Guardians?
Yeah, for sure. So Guild of Guardians is a fantasy squad-based action RPG game. It's free to play on mobile, and the idea of it is that players build their dream squad team of heroes, and they're kind of battling through dungeons, earning rewards, leveling up, and also playing together with their friends in guilds.
Cool. And I don't know. You can tell me exactly sort of where you are in the development process, but I played one of the open, the closed alpha, I think it was, probably. I don't know how you describe these things as closed betas, alphas, whatever. But anyway, I played a version of the game, I think a couple of months ago, and it seemed sort of the basic sort of stuff seemed pretty polished there. So sort of where are you in the development cycle?
So we are currently still in development. The game, we're working towards a soft launch into a global launch right now. And one of the main things that we're doing right now is we're kind of fine-tuning and improving the feel of the game. That's kind of where we're at. Functionally, the game is pretty much complete in terms of the content and the functionality. We do have a couple more things we want to add in as well to add kind of more strategy and specialization in the metagame and in the economy. But those are the two main areas that we're working on right now and that the team's really focused on.
Mm-hmm. So have you, always dangerous to give dates or anything, but is there anything roughly you can sort of say about, as much as you know now, when you might be going into soft launch or that sort of thing, or are you keeping that close to your chest?
Yeah, that's got to be the least favorite question that
Yeah.
I get. But I think, look, the team's working very hard to get to a high confidence state that we can share with the community. For now, we're really focused on giving visibility to the community as we go along. We actually have play tests that we invite people to come along with every 2 weeks or so to share that progress. So I don't have a precise date yet, but the team is working hard and we're quite excited for when that day comes.
You could be a politician in another life. You batted that away quite nicely without giving anything away. Good. And I will just say, it was sort of interesting, sort of actually playing that sort of it was a sort of the Web 2 sort of part of the game. Didn't have any blockchain stuff, but it was it was you can sort of get the feel of you have basically a squad based of 4 characters, and obviously you're sort of leveling them up as you sort of go, and the typical sort of fantasy RPG sort of character classes, and you're sort of choosing which ones work together in which dungeons, and you're sort of running them through, and it's sort of sort of the game I sort of quite like, actually, because I'm much too old now to play any sort of twitchy sort of twitch shooting game. So you're sort of leading the characters around, and their AI basically does sort of most of the job for you, and you're sort of the decisions you're making, as you say, is more around that sort of meta layer of who you're leveling up and what sort of squad you're building. But as I said, you did sort of write about why you thought sort of mobile and squad RPG was a sort of good genre for sort of a Web3 game. So can you, I mean, it's a bit old hat for you now, but can you just explain a little bit about why you've done that? Because clearly there are blockchain games of every genre under the sun currently being made.
Yes. So. Yeah. There's a few reasons why we opted to do a mobile squad-based RPG. And I think ultimately is that we thought it was a really good fit for NFTs and the blockchain as a technology. And we thought that we can use this technology to actually provide a better experience to players who like this type of game. Because ultimately that's what we're here to do. We're here to create better games and better experiences using blockchain as a tool. And we picked this genre and this category because RPGs are very familiar to people. A lot of RPGs have deep progression systems, lots of economies, different crafting systems, and so on. And so we believe that is a very natural fit for player-driven economies, which is one of the things that we really want to empower and create in Guild of Guardians. I think the second thing, which you also alluded to, is that the types of players that play these games are also very into the strategy and meta layer. A lot of it is about the strategy of forming your team, what works with what, like where you're going to really focus your efforts and resources within the game. And that kind of strategic decision-making layer, we think is a really good fit for games with an economy and games with trading, where it's not just about twitch action, right? And the strategy and choices you make really matter. And the third element there is that when we think about trade, like NFTs and blockchain, being able to show them off and being able to have them interact with others is really important. And so having a layer there where you can see all the cool stuff that the other people have, and you're able to contribute to a guild, and people can see kind of your contribution and to that guild. We think that those social systems also tie in really well to Web3 and NFTs as well. And so those are some of the main reasons there which we decided to launch Guild of Guardians on.
And I guess we should also point out it is called Guild of Guardians, and you have quite a strong view on the sort of the guild that you mentioned there, sort of the social structure. So can you dig a little bit into that, into how that works?
Sure. So fundamentally, we believe that games are more fun with friends. A lot of people will play games, particularly mobile games, for years, long after they're finished, like progressing mostly in the game, just because of the community and the friendships that they've built through the game. And so we believe fundamentally that these social systems actually add a lot of value to players. And people in the blockchain space talk a lot about financial value. We're talking about something totally different. It's something that you actually helps improve your life and kind of gives you a feeling of reward. And so kind of these social systems in the games is what we want to create through guilds. And the idea is that your actions matter not just for yourself, but for other people. There's a reason for you're not just logging in every day for yourself. You're also logging in for other people in your guild. And when you do something cool and something good happens, other people celebrate that with you, and vice versa. And so that's the kind of system that we want to create together, layered together with the economy aspect, where players are trading and crafting together, and they're potentially specializing in different areas of the game, forming different types of squads to get different resources in order to achieve goals as a guild, right? And to receive rewards or prizes as a guild. So we believe kind of tying those things together is actually really powerful for creating a better experience for players.
And in terms of sort of NFTs, obviously the characters in the game, the 4 characters that you would have in your squad, obviously you probably have many more characters, and you sort of choose them in the squad. They're NFTs, and you have NFTs live on the Immutable X blockchain at the moment for the characters, but also the guilds are NFTs as well, aren't they? So maybe you talk a little bit about, because I don't know if that's a first. I still don't hear that many about that many games where the NFT guild structure is also an NFT, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah, I suppose we're quite interested in innovating and leading in the space, and so when we're thinking about what can be an NFT, we're thinking beyond just characters, right? And so guilds is one thing which we've kind of put as NFTs in the game. Another one is actually energy tokens as well. Okay. So typically, a lot of mobile games will sell energy as just an in-app purchase, but we've created actually energy tokens which give you some benefit in energy, but they're tradable. So you buy it, you can play with it. So you can only have one per account, so it's not abusable. And then if you don't want to play anymore, or if you don't find it useful, you can then sell it to someone else, and these are limited. So the idea of guild ownership is that we want players to take these seriously. We want the in addition to the natural social constructs that come from running a guild, kind of as a leader, you want to lead your team to success and all of that. The way our guilds work right now is also the leaders get kind of a percentage of the sales from items that are crafted in the guild. And so there's an additional incentive as well for them to create this positive environment for their players in order to kind of achieve those goals as well. And in some ways, it'll be guilds are self-regulating. So if there's a guild that is poorly run, you'll probably leave and find a better one that you enjoy more. Maybe there's different types of guilds who want to do different things, and so we're quite interested in seeing how those mechanics play out as well.
How does that mean that I can't just create a guild because I need the NFT? And if that is the case, or even aside from that, how do you deal with sort of scarcity? Because obviously in pretty much every mobile game up to this point, people can just create guilds, sort of as many as you like. So how does that sort of mechanic sort of work in terms of scarcity?
At the moment, the founder guilds are quite scarce. We do plan to introduce new guilds in the future that aren't founder guilds. And one of the things that we're debating as a team and kind of locking down as well, which is, in what form do these guilds come to life? Do they do something slightly different? Like how do we actually distribute them? Do we distribute them to existing players who own a guild, or are there other ways to earn them? And so there's actually quite a few design possibilities when it comes to adding new guilds on, which we're quite excited to explore. But in general, we do believe the game's going to be more enjoyable if players are in a guild, and so we do want players to join guilds.
Yeah. No, I think it's, having played sort of quite a lot of these sort of games on mobile, and it's the guild thing is for me often sort of really frustrating because I think for most people, in some games you sort of have to join a guild, or they're very much incentivized to join a guild because there's sort of aspects of the game you can't access without the guild. But you have no sort of, there's not very good sort of social ways of sort of connecting with the guild, and probably they're people who maybe don't have the same language as you and all this sort of stuff. So the guild sort of structure, clearly when it works very well in a mobile game, is a key sort of plank of retention and monetization and all that sort of stuff. But every game has a guild, and in most of them, I think most of those guilds just work really badly. And the typical thing is you go away on holiday, and then you come back and you've been kicked out. No matter how busy you've been up to that point, because you've been inactive for sort of a week or so, and so you get sort of kicked out, and then you have the whole sort of thing of having to find another guild that sort of works out. So I do think it is interesting.
It is, yeah. I think
how you sort of create that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, particularly with the fact that communities in Web3 games extend outside of the game so much more naturally. So even though Guild of Guardians isn't live, we've already seen people start forming guilds with like-minded players. There's a website actually where you can go to already apply or advertise for your guild, and there's quite a few posted on there. And so I think these mechanisms outside of the game that help increase coordination, or even tools inside of the game, for example, being able to auto-translate languages so people can play with other players regardless of language. These are things that really will help, we think, kind of the matching of players to guilds.
Yeah, and I think having sort of ownable assets as well. I mean, I guess we'll see. I was going to say, I think that probably incentivizes players and guilds or allows them to incentivize in a way that is pretty much impossible to do without those sort of things. I mean, it's not going to immediately stop all sort of bad or toxic behaviour. Potentially, you could say it sort of makes it worse when you have assets with some sort of real value in them. But I think in most cases, it allows people to, people are going to be more serious in their interactions with guilds in that way, and hopefully that feeds sort of from the players into the guild and the guild to the players as well when you sort of have that slightly more structured relationship. But
in particular the guild owner as well, and that's really often the person who makes or breaks the experience for everyone else, the person leading the group. And even if it's something as simple as they get really involved in teaching new players who join their guild because they want to create their reputation, they want more players to join, they want them to do well. Small things like this, we think, will also help improve the overall experience that players have.
And also, when we talk about guilds, I guess in the Web3 world, there are these well-established, guilds. YGG, I guess, the most famous, but a whole bunch of these other ones. And obviously, that sort of your use of guilds plays into that. And obviously, a lot of the founding guilds were bought by these sort of existing Web3 gaming sort of guilds as well. So you're sort of interacting on that level as well. So that'd be interesting. And there's a game called I'm sure you know Castle Crush, which is sort of more. It's a Web 2 game. They sort of bought some NFTs in there. We could not have a discussion at this point about whether that's a good process or not. But it's again interesting. If you look at I play that game quite a lot. And if you look at the top guilds in the sort of the NFT earning thing, pretty much all of those are YGG or the Brazilian one, Bays and all that. So it's interesting to see that the guilds are already sort of interacting in those experiences, and they are the top guilds already. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like so far, I've been talking about guilds in the sense of just the traditional in-game guilds and Guild of Guardians. But you're absolutely right. There's many guilds out there. There's really big ones, and there's a lot of micro ones that are a lot smaller. And the opportunity to involve them in games is massive, right? I think the real question is going to be what is the right model, but it is there's a massive opportunity there, and they're very involved in games right now.
Something sort of, well, I was going to say something similar. We'll see if it is similar or not. So one sort of announcement that you've done recently is you've got a whole bunch of esports teams. I'm not quite sure what level they're working with you in Guild of Guardians, but I thought that would be a good thing to talk about. So one, if you could just actually tell people what the news is, because I can't remember the exact details, and two, what do you hope to sort of get out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Guild of Guardians recently announced that we're partnering with 8 of the world's biggest esport brands in kind of an IP partnership deal. So these are teams like Team Liquid, Cloud9, Fnatic, and the likes, and all of them are kind of working together with us to do a few things. And I think the main thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to better align incentives between gaming brands and organizations with games. And Web3 is a really good tool to do this, the way that we think about Web3. And so these 8 teams are working with us to bring their IP to Guild of Guardians. And so they've kind of trusted us with their IP, which we're very proud to be able to do, because that's not a common thing for them, but their brand is everything to them. And so we're going to bring their IP to life in Guild of Guardians in the form of characters. So these cool playable characters that are inspired by each of the teams, and they'll also be involved in the more competitive side of Guild of Guardians as well when we think about kind of leaderboards and rewards. And one of the cool ideas that we're playing around with is that players will be able to compete for one of these teams. So as a player, you'll be able to align yourself with one of the teams, kind of a faction as we're calling it in the game. So you can align yourself with Cloud9 or T1, right, whoever your favorite team is, and you're able to compete for them and kind of get rewards in the form of leaderboard rewards, in a form of democratized esports. And so that's coming out, and we're quite excited to do that, not just in terms of putting their logo on characters. It's actually an IP integration. So we've co-designed these playable guardians with them. So excited to reveal those.
So because I guess whenever you see sort of press releases about esports teams and games, your brain immediately goes, does this mean this game is going to be sort of part of that of the esports thing? And with Guild of Guardians, I thought that's probably unlikely, because you're not Counter-Strike, you're not one of those really twitchy games, and it's interesting that esports teams are very much sort of focused on, that's their bread and butter. It's a very specific sort of game. There's the MOBAs and the first-person shooters, and that's what esports teams do. So it's probably in the early stages, or even probably, Guild of Guardians is probably not a game that team that could all be creating a team to create, because it's just not that sort of game, is it? So it's a broader sort of, I guess, what would you say, like community engagement sort of.
Exactly, yeah.
Sort of feature.
The way I think about it is Guild of Guardians is more suitable for democratized esports. It's something which everyone can compete in, every guild, every player. And that's the idea of it. It's going to be not going to be in a massive stadium and players playing around tables. That's less likely, especially in the short term. But there is a big opportunity to work with these brands to promote Guild of Guardians to their audience, and there's actually a surprisingly pretty big overlap in terms of the esport gaming audience and people who are aware about crypto and NFTs, and so we think there's a pretty good synergy there as well.
Because I guess you are also solving a problem for the esports teams, which is it's all very well to be like a 15, 14-year-old who plays these Twitch games really heavily because they've got loads of time and they've got good reflexes. But by the time you get a bit older, then you can't really compete at that level. So how do esports teams continue to engage those audiences who actually aren't playing, at a whatever sort of competitive level? So it's sort of interesting. It plays both ways. Cool. Something else I wanted to talk to you about was clearly, as we mentioned several times, Guild of Guardians is a mobile game. It's designed, it is primarily, it is a mobile game, Apple's sort of brought out this sort of slightly, I guess to Apple they think it's very clear, but everyone else has had lots of sort of arguments about what exactly does Apple mean about its NFT sort of terms and conditions, and I guess we don't really know yet because no one's really sort of put anything through the App Store. But as much as you can talk about, be interesting to get your view on, do you think this is Apple? I suppose the positive thing is Apple is now allowing people to sell NFTs through. Using in-app purchases. Obviously Apple gets 30% on that, so that's the sort of something we didn't have visibility around before. We have not much visibility about how that relates to people running a marketplace or people running stuff sort of web, and what those NFTs actually do in the game. But do you think, broadly speaking, this is sort of a positive move for the industry?
So broadly speaking, I think it is, and it's one that I know that Apple have actually been moving towards for a while, even before they announced it. And I think broadly the significance is that they're allowing people to have NFTs in the app, and they want 30%, and that's it. So I think broadly speaking, that's really the rule that they're looking to enforce, but they're allowing everyone who has an iPhone to go and interact with NFTs and learn about that. And I think this is something that isn't talked about as much, is actually the secondary part of it. Like Apple is open also to secondary trading also on their app, so a marketplace. Again, they would want their 30%, so that might make it unattractive for many people, because you would have an additional kind of 30% margin between the buyer and seller. But they would allow that. Players to trade on that, and maybe for some users they're willing to pay that because they don't know anything about NFTs, right? So it's a very interesting move in the space. I think as you mentioned, the terms are always going to be unclear. I think that's partially by design, so that they can change it as they go. But yeah, I think it's a much better outcome than them saying no to NFTs. Yeah, and it is interesting. I was just reading something the other day where someone was talking actually about the secondary market, and they were saying, well, clearly Apple would, looking at what Apple allows other people, nothing around NFTs, it just allows other people to do with marketplaces. They wouldn't expect 30% on that. So it is sort of interesting. There is this sort of levels of optimism and pessimism around exactly sort of what the situation is. But because clearly, I guess, if you just said Apple's going to allow people to sell NFTs, then it's just a sort of a broad headline. Everyone would have been amazing. Like, we can suddenly do the things we weren't sure we could do it through the App Store with 3 billion people. But I guess it's maybe the human nature to immediately think, but what does that actually mean? And let's find some negatives in there. So, and I guess the other thing is, as you say, this is sort of something they've clarified now, and having clarified that, that's going to be then much harder for them to say in 6 months' time, no, and now we're going to ban NFTs, because they've sort of clarified it. And I guess one would hope that over time that those terms and conditions will modify in a positive manner in terms of what we in the blockchain games industry would like to see. This is like a first sort of pass, and then exactly. Exactly. It's, don't get me wrong, it's not ideal.
No.
And Apple have a huge monopoly of the market, which allows them to do this. But it is a step in the right direction, at least I believe.
Yeah. Cool. I guess actually, just as we're on this point, it is also interesting. I think that I think people, me probably personally, but generally people see Apple as very much a sort of a monopolistic sort of monolith that is just sort of decides on things and is not sort of influenced by outside conditions. But clearly, over the last couple of years, all we've seen, not just at Apple but for Google as well, all we've seen is sort of pressure on the 30% App Store tax, as people like to see it. and in lots of countries now, certain types of apps you don't pay 30% on. Obviously, for subscriptions, you don't pay 30% on. There's a whole bunch of sort of not loopholes, but a whole bunch of assets on app stores that you don't pay 30% on primary sales. And obviously we've got the whole Epic thing going on, which is a much more existential thing. And now you've got sort of Elon Musk saying he's going to do a Twitter phone. I mean, there is actually quite a lot of pressure on these companies to sort of modify what has been seen as like a monopolistic sort of thing. So.
And I think the interesting thing to think about is that behind the company there are individuals. There's individuals like leaders making these decisions, and the perspectives of them on the NFT space is changing as well. I think 3 years ago they probably would have been super risk averse. Like no one knows what it is. It's super scary. But now there are some there are going to be advocates and people who really believe in decentralization and all these different things within Apple and within the leadership teams. And so I think as the industry shifts and kind of proves itself more as well, we'll also see the individuals and therefore the company take a shift.
And I guess the final thing, my final view on that point is it's also, I mean, Google's always been seen as being slightly more open in that sense because it's not a sort of hardware company and it's a bit more sort of tech focused. And if nothing else, this provides an opportunity for Google to move a bit faster and say, well, Apple's not letting you do this, but we'll let you do this. And obviously, Google's as a company, Alphabet's profits aren't really based on App Store revenue in the same way. I mean, Apple's aren't either, but maybe a bit more entrenched in how they want to build a business. So maybe the opportunity is more on the Google store. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I'm sure they're talking about it right now.
Cool. So wrapping up now. So if people are interested in Guild of Guardians, what should they be doing? How can they get on these open or these closed alphas and things like that? Where should people be pointing their web browsers?
I always encourage people to follow us on Twitter, which is Guild of Guardian. It doesn't have the S at the end because we ran out of space. Twitter won't let us.
Okay.
We've got to appeal to Elon. Or join our Discord. Discord's a great place to find us, and everyone's super friendly in there, and they'll be able to help you out with anything, whether it's questions about how the game works or whether it's about how to apply for the closed testing or to get the latest news on what else we have coming up and different leaks and community events and things like that.
And people should also be checking out the NFTs. So I mean, I think I picked up a few. I think they're about $5 or something, the cheapest ones now. So you can sort of go and start having a look around, and obviously not investment advice or anything, but it's good to people set up a Immutable X wallet. Fairly easy to do if you're just setting up from MetaMask. So going through those going through those motions and getting yourself ready for whenever Derek presses the button and lets us play the game.
Yeah, it's gas free as well on Immutable X. So all of the NFT trading there will be gas free.
Cool. Good. Lovely. Thank you very much, Derek, for your time. Good to have you on again.
Yeah, thank you. Great to chat. Love your work.
And I suppose we should say let's do it again when the game's out. Which you'll let me know.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Let's do it.
And thanks to you guys for listening, watching, however you're consuming the podcast. So every episode we're talking to people who are building out these, I think fascinating, innovative new games. We've never seen anything like this, sort of games with actual sort of actual real value and ownership in them, and everyone's coming up with, I guess, sort of slightly different takes on that. There's no sort of template at the moment, which makes it even more exciting. So please subscribe, and I'll come back next time.